In The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, Ed Gibbon's gossipy, tell-all chronicle of the West's first millennium, Attila returns to his wooden palace beyond the Danube after sacking Aquileia, an Italian maritime city on the Hadriatic coast, and declaims, "Sure, we enriched ourselves with the spoils of a wealthy and effeminate people. Sure, we stole their gold and jewels. Sure, we stripped their palaces of splendid and costly furniture. We wantonly destroyed exquisite works of art. We defiled consecrated objects. We tortured and slaughtered their clergy. And let no man say that we did not imbibe tremendous quantities of Falernian wine and slake our sensual appetites on helpless, trembling captives, male and female. And yet, notwithstanding the amazing amount of fun I had in Aquileia, it's so great to be home. My home. Here I don't worry every minute about having to be the epitome of rapacious avarice and unrelenting cruelty. I can relax and be myself. How sweet to be in my large wooden palace again. How sweet to lay again in the warm beds of my innumerable wives. Could it be pure coincidence that the sentiments of one of history's luminary strongmen and belletristes so perfectly mirror those of another who lives almost 16 centuries later? I felt exactly the same way about returning home. Sure, D.C. had been a blast. Sure, the Lincoln's morning breath had been primo shit, but it just felt so damn good to be back at headquarters. And, as usual, the staff made quite a to-do over my homecoming. For the occasion, Desiree had outfitted the entire detachment of bionic elderly bodyguards in the resplendent regalia of Hungarian hussars. Imagine rimming the promenade that leads to the front entrance of Team Leyner headquarters, a double column of testosterone-enhanced, 90-year-old women with electrically activated polymer musculature in fur busbies with plumes and vivid yellow busby bags, sky-blue dolman jackets, fur-lined pelisses slung over the shoulder, tight braided red trousers, and concertina crinkled boots. Was I absolutely 100% on the money when I hired Desiree Buttcake, or what? I mean, the woman just has this flair, this terrific panache about everything she does. Immediately upon returning from a trip, I convene a meeting of my inner circle to assess the current status of Team Leyner projects and to discuss opportunities or problems that may have arisen in my absence. Either Joe Casal or Desiree Buttcake will have prepared an agenda of matters they consider urgent, and I'll have usually punched a dozen or so items into my laptop while on the plane or limo. Do I always conduct my business with this kind of non-stop, indefatigable intensity and zeal? You bet I do. Do I make any distinction whatsoever between my personal life and my career? No, sir, I do not. I work and I play at one speed. Hyperdrive, Mach 9, adrenaline OD, total warp. It's the only way I know how to live. I've been lucky enough over the past few years to have developed a very close friendship with the acclaimed theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking. I first became personally acquainted with Stephen when his secretary wrote a letter to my editor at Harmony Books to say that Hawking didn't feel completely comfortable publishing A Brief History of Time until I'd reviewed the book's fundamental theorem and given my critical imprimatur. Luckily, I was between projects and happy to oblige Stephen and his publisher, Bantam Books. Recently, I was seated ringside next to Stephen at the Evander Holyfield-George Foreman bout in Atlantic City, and I mentioned my suspicion that I had the ability to destroy celestial bodies simply by willing it. And not only did Stephen find this plausible in the abstract, but actually correlated it with several heretofore unexplained supernovae. I brought my fist down on the conference room table with peremptory authority. Let's get busy, folks. Joe, what do you have for me, babe?
Well, first of all, Mr. Leyner, Ken Dietrich, he's VP Marketing for PepsiCo Inc., called about the agreement wherein you mentioned Diet Pepsi in a new book, and PepsiCo remunerates Team Leyner with $750,000 in cash, plus $250,000 in stock. He basically wants to know if we've made any progress on the product insert.
Tell Dietrich it's done, not to worry about it anymore, and to get the check in the mail. What else?
Mr. Leyner, we have a minor personnel problem. You know our regulation prohibiting any Team Leyner employee from earning income outside the organization? Well, one of the mailroom clerks is selling marijuana grown on pieces of sod he's removed from various Major League Baseball stadiums. He's got Wrigley Wiggly, Fenway Dream Bean, Comiskey Park and Ride. He's even selling marijuana grown on stadium sod from vintage years, like 1969 Shea Stadium, Sinsemelia. I didn't want to make a decision about the guy until you got back.
86'em, babe. No freelancing means no freelancing. No exceptions. And impound the sod.
Okay, Mr. Leyner.
Joe, any paternity suits this week?
Only two, Mr. Leyner. Both women are members of the Ecuadorian Olympic equestrian team, and their attorneys hired a forensic DNA fingerprinting laboratory to provide incontestable evidence that you're the father.
As soon as the meeting's over, Joe, I want you to FedEx the director of the lab a Team Leyner belt buckle and insignia magnet, and an official Team Leyner trivet. Okay, babe?
Consider it done, Mr. Leyner.
Anything else, Joe?
Two more things. While you were away, a Japanese industrialist named Ryoye Saito, who owns the Daishowa Paper Manufacturing Company, paid $19,250 in a public auction at Sotheby's for one of your discarded deodorant sticks with a stray armpit hair. And this is such a weird coincidence. He's hired the same DNA fingerprinting lab to confirm that it's your armpit hair. And if it's not, Sotheby's has agreed to refund the $19K and change. And lastly, I just wanted to remind you that this coming Friday, they're shooting the commercial for Becker Surgical Devices, and they need you on the set at about 10 a.m.
Thanks, Joe. Good job. Desiree, you're up.
Mark, based on the notes that you made before you left for D.C., we've worked up a draft of the press release you want put out, and I just want to make sure that we're all in sync here. You basically want to inform book critics that in the event of a bad review, Team Leyner will not be held responsible for the wrath of fans who see you as the articulator of their vision and who see your detractors as a threat to their way of life. Consequently, Team Leyner cannot be held responsible for the physical safety of the reviewer and his or her family in the event of an unfavorable notice. Is that about the gist of it?
That's it exactly.
And you want this put out in general release?
I want this sent directly to our friends themselves. To the Lehman Haupts, to the Kakutanis, to the Yardleys, to the Walcotts, and the Atlases and the Raffertys. Understood?
Understood.
I want everyone here to remember something. Team Leyner plays hardball. If anyone, and I don't care who it is, I don't care if it's my own grandmother, if anyone attempts to impede the fulfillment of our destiny, we fuck with them big time. We fuck with them big time, everyone chorused. Anything else, Des?
This is somewhat of a corollary to what we've just been discussing. Joe and I have been analyzing a trend we see developing in media coverage of Team Leyner, and we've come up with a means of countering what we perceive as an incipient problem that could become dangerous unless we act decisively now. There are, increasingly, those in the media who would twist the work we're doing in our writers' vocational counseling intensives into something sinister. scurrilous rumors abound about your supposed steroid use, your messianic fantasies, your weakness for Hispanic women. Joe and I propose a public relations program designed to resuscitate your image in the media. We propose that you engage in a well-publicized personal campaign to help agoraphobic housewives with their poetry. We see two options here. Video teleconferencing, which enables you to counsel agoraphobic poetesses wherever they live without having to leave headquarters. Signals are relayed through a satellite over the Yukon, to a ground station in northern Michigan, to a satellite over the West Indies, and finally to a fiber optic link in Atlanta. Or you can simply visit the women at their homes. What do you think?
I think I'll make house calls.
You like the proposal?
Desiree, Joe, it's top-notch work. I'm proud of you both.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mr. Leyner. Mr. Leyner.
Yes, Joe.
Mr. Leyner, do you have a few minutes? There's something kind of private I'd like to talk to you about.
Sure, babe. Why don't you meet me at the Trigger Man in about 10 minutes? We'll have a few drinks and talk. The Trigger Man is a bar and pistol range that we opened for Team Leyner staffers so that at the end of a long day, there'd be a place on campus where they could have a few drinks and shoot firearms. A place for them to blow off steam. I like to come down to the Trigger Man after a late night meeting to unwind and maybe chat with some of the lower echelon employees with whom I don't normally interact. I'd just emptied a magazine of 125-grain jacketed hollow points from my 6.5-inch 44 Auto Mag when I noticed Joe on the bar stool next to mine.
Mr. Leyner, I'm in love.
Hold on a second, Joe, I said, removing my ear protectors. You're what?
I'm in love.
I ordered 2 triple Chivises and another 15 rounds of hollow points. In love with whom, babe?
Mr. Leyner, I'm in love with Desiree. You know, we've been working really closely together on that press release for the book critics and on the PR program, and I just fell totally in love with her. And the trouble is that I know she doesn't feel the same way about me. I mean, she's such an incredibly beautiful woman, and I'm not trying to be self-deprecating, but I'm not like traditionally handsome. And this unrequited stuff makes me feel like a bit of an a-hole.
Joe will not say the word asshole. He says instead a-hole. Come on, Joe, lighten up, would ya? Maybe there's a way for you to somehow provoke Des into feeling romantic about you.
Provoke her how?
Well, I can only tell you what works for me, babe. I take my clothes off. Women go nuts. I know that sounds stupid, but it's how I do it that's important. It's the style. It's the head trip I get into. Each item of clothing, leather blazer, t-shirt, snakeskin boots, jeans, socks, and finally underpants, is removed as if I were stripping for an audience at a maximum security prison for criminally insane women, with that masturbatory simultaneity of languor and urgency. I whip the floor with my silk bikini briefs that have been stretched grotesquely out of shape after a day of restraining my restless genitals, and I hear in my head the horrific cacophony of gasps, moans, ululations, stomping feet, shrieks, sobs. Please. You know what I'm saying?
I guess so, Mr. Leyner, but I don't know if I could.
Listen, the thing you've got to be careful about is the effect something like that can have on a woman. I was with this notary public, Felice Ruiz, once, and I'm doing the whole bit, and I get to the part where I'm whipping the floor with my silk undies, and I guess my body's just too much for the poor girl. she goes apoplectic on me. So what I'm trying to say is that you have to exercise some degree of caution here. Are you following me, babe?
Yes, Mr. Leyner.
Joe, can I get you another drink?
No, thanks, Mr. Leyner. I think I should get to bed. I've got a pretty full schedule in the morning.
Okay, babe. Sweet dreams. And thanks again for all your effort. I love that guy. I ordered an anisette with 3 spent shells. The shells, still muzzle hot, warm the anisette for a nice nightcap. I felt good. When I returned to Team Leyner headquarters, it's approximately 5:20 a.m. Arlene is being let out the front door, her wrists handcuffed behind her, surrounded by FBI agents. A miscellany of Team Leyner employees is milling around, smoking cigarettes, muttering, glaring, cursing. Joe Casal is screaming at the top of his lungs, one of his cryptic algebraic curses,
Go, M.W., you PGs, you pimply deed, CL flapping, you quaffing Y-eyes.
My immediate chain of thought is missing fiction workshop participants, federal kidnapping indictments, prison. I throw one of the agents, a burly guy about 6'6", 275 pounds, up against the column and slap him hard across the face about a dozen times. His playmates draw their weapons. You gonna shoot me, you morons? There'd be riots in every major city of this country. Holster your weapons, man, orders the senior agent. Holster your weapons. That's better, I snarl. Now what's the problem here? Mark Leyner and Arlene Portada, you are both being charged with theft of a federally protected biohistorical specimen. Ah, I thought to myself, greatly relieved. This has nothing to do with kidnapping fiction workshop participants. It's the Lincoln's morning breath. It's just a bullshit larceny rap. Joe, get Gary Knobloch, Chief Corporate Counsel for Team Leyner, over here right away, okay, babe? The rest of you get back to work. Everything's going to be all right. Knobloch was leafing through the U.S. Criminal Code. Let's see. Tailgating a presidential motorcade, talking dirty to a congressional page, terrorizing a U.S. mail carrier, testifying falsely against a fetus. Here we go. Theft of a federally protected biohistorical specimen. First offense, weekly punitive confiscation. Second offense, removal of the nasal septum, leaving offender with 1 large nostril. Third offense, underwater spear gun execution by scuba diving firing squad. Listen, Mark, I don't like telling you what to do. You're my favorite writer. You're my favorite client. You're the godfather of my 2 children, but I strongly advise you to plead guilty on this thing and live with punitive confiscation once a week. If we go to trial and there's any way they can prove that you did something like this before, you could be walking around with 1 big hole in the middle of your face. Wouldn't make a very attractive book jacket photo, kid. Arlene, Joe, Des, what do you think? I asked.
I agree, Mr. Leyner. 1 big nostril wouldn't look that great on a book cover, but I guess I'm not really one to talk.
Thanks, babe. But I meant, what do you think about copping a guilty plea? I agree with Gary, Desiree said. I think you guys should play it safe. And you have so much stuff. Maybe losing something once a week would be a blessing in disguise, sort of like spring cleaning. Arlene? Yeah, I guess so. But I don't know why I'm even being charged. It wasn't my idea to steal that shit. Oh, like you said, Mark, it's so wrong. Take the Lincoln's morning breath back to the National Museum of Health and Medicine this minute. I didn't say I said that. And like you didn't get off on it as much as I did. I never said I didn't get off on it, you creep. Hey, come on, you 2. So we plead guilty to first offense theft of a federally protected biohistorical specimen and accept weekly punitive confiscation. Yes? All right, Gary. The punishment consisted of having one item confiscated each week. At 10 a.m. every Monday morning, the authorities would arrive in a large truck. They'd read the statement that the courts required them to read prior to each punitive confiscation. They'd handcuff us, and they'd put us in the truck in a special enclosed compartment where we were strapped to chairs in front of a 27-inch television screen. The identical 30-minute video was shown to us each week. And while we were watching the video, a porno film with all the sex edited out, leaving only the wooden narrative segues, the one item was confiscated and placed in the truck's main compartment. The Supreme Court has since ruled that forcing someone to view only the narrative segues from a pornographic film is in violation of the Eighth Amendment. We were then allowed to return to our home. We were never told which item was confiscated. Sometimes it was obvious: the piano, the living room sofa, the wall phone in the kitchen, etc. But often, we wouldn't know what was taken until we needed it, and it wasn't there. If we were discovered to have replaced a confiscated item, our punitive status would be upgraded to second offense: nasal septumectomy. Sir, is there anywhere in particular you want to go? No, just keep flying. I'm in the XXT-7, a top-secret experimental hyperspeed jet fighter that does about Mach 8. I just had to get away from it all. Get up in the azure void of high-altitude airspace for a while. Try to get some perspective. You know, when I was a teenager, I was told that I'd spend my entire life in and out of institutions, pathologically maladapted, living on society's fringes. Well, it didn't turn out quite that way, folks. I'm only 35 years old. I've achieved international notoriety as a best-selling author, bodybuilder, martial artist. I make more in a year from product endorsements than most people make in a lifetime. I've got a multi-million-dollar headquarters with a guard tower, gatehouses, patrol dogs, armed sentries, a vast warren of underground tunnels. I've got a gorgeous wife and an entourage of gophers and sycophants. So what's the problem, right? The problem is that when you reach a level of achievement that few people have ever reached, when you routinely do things that no one else is even capable of imagining, never mind attempting, when you are destined for greatness and possess the fortitude and inner focus to fulfill that destiny, you have no real friends, no real family. People look at you with awe, with fear, with lust, with suspicion, with envy, but not with affection. This is just a fact of life for me. It's just the way it is. So is it paranoia or my fierce instinct for survival that makes me suspect an agent provocateur is in our midst? How did Iron Man Wang's hit squad of horny robo-trash find me so easily that day in the interstate outside of Wenton's mill? Why did Rocco Trezza suddenly disappear? Is it pure coincidence that the same DNA fingerprinting laboratory retained by the attorney for both members of the Ecuadorian Olympic equestrian team is also analyzing my armpit hair for Sotheby's? How did the FBI connect me to the Lincoln's morning breath heist? Here's an even better question. Why does the possibility that there's a traitor in my inner circle excite me so much? I guess you could say that I like things natural. By natural, I mean naturally selected, as in Darwin. In other words, organisms with advantageous mutations are likely to outcompete the original forms, gradually outnumbering and replacing them in the population. That sort of thing. Sure, I have my tender moments. I like the silent white dawn after a night's heavy snowfall. Sometimes I like to say something sarcastic to the person making my submarine sandwich, or to the person slicing meat for my gyro, just to see them smile. Maybe it's their first smile of the day. But basically, I'm pretty contemptuous of people, because most people are weak, and I find weakness pretty sickening. I like my men, my women, my coffee, my cocktails, I guess everything in my life, strong. That's why I can offer my unequivocal endorsement of Armor Guard high-security barbed wire fences. The choice of maximum security institutions across the country, Armor Guard fences feature substantially longer barbs with additional barb points for superior intimidation and entanglement capabilities. Cut! Cut! Hold it, Mr. Leyner. What's the problem? We're getting a weird glare off that section of barbed wire over there. Why don't we take a break and we'll adjust the lighting over there? Okay, babe. Hi, I'm Mark Leyner. With my reputation as a tough guy and best-selling author, I'm asked to do commercials, well, as you just saw, for all kinds of tough products like penal fencing, cattle prods, bulletproof vests, etc. But when it comes to my family and my friends and my fans, those I cherish most dearly, I can be a real softy. That's why when Becker Surgical Devices asked me to tell people about their balloon angioplasty equipment, I said I'd love to. There's nothing good about tough, stenosed arteries. When plaque accumulates, inhibiting the flow of blood to vital organs, the life of someone you love, perhaps even your own life, may be threatened. And I don't know about you, but I love life. Coronary arteries clogged with atherosclerotic plaque aren't a very pretty sight. And that's where Becker Surgical Devices comes in. Becker Surgical Devices, makers of fine percutaneous transluminal coronary angioplasty catheter tubes and balloons, is the overwhelming choice of cardiologists across the country. And remember, Becker Surgical Devices is the official balloon angioplasty instrument supplier for Team Leyner. Cut! That was perfect, Mr. Leyner. Absolutely perfect. Introduction. In order to rescue my book from the ineluctable current of its own narrative, and in order to resuscitate myself, depressed by an impending divorce, stupefied in an inner marsh of ennui, I have decided to work in miniature. Accordingly, this next chapter shall be comprised of concise segments with headings. Mailbag. Dear Mark, first of all, I'd just like to say what tremendous pleasure your books have given my entire family. My wife and I just think that you're an out-and-out American genius of the highest magnitude. The kids think that reading your fiction is, quote, excellent, like being on drugs, unquote, and they both want to be writers, thanks to you. We all loved Martha Stewart's piece on you in Traveler. Please say buenos dias to your Ecuadorian girlfriend for us. We've recently read articles in the Inquirer and the Star about how distracting your divorce from Arlene has been for you and how it might significantly delay the completion of your new book. And we've heard rumors about your violent mood swings from steroids and about how they and the Lincoln's morning breath scandal may have cost you lucrative endorsement contracts for Ore-Ida tater tots and, more importantly, for phallotropin, the new synthetic penile growth hormone from Genitotech, and about how the government's punitive confiscation program is eating away at your net worth. and how Team Leyner has become a miasma of antagonism, misunderstanding, and mutual suspicion, and about how there's sectarian strife within the elderly bionic security force, and about how Baby Lago defected and went to work for Tom Clancy. And we'd just like to say that we don't believe any of it. And we look forward to your new book with great excitement and anticipation. Ed Audette, Cicero, New York. Dear, insert name, thanks so much for your kind words. Although my busy schedule does not permit me to personally respond to the tremendous volume of adulatory mail that I receive, I'd like to send you and your family an official Team Leyner gift. Please indicate on the enclosed business reply card which exciting premium you'd like rushed to your home. One slow-release polymer matrix system Leyner Head sublingual software lozenge that placed under the tongue provides you with the sensation of being a sinewy and licentious pop icon. Afangul, Petrarchan Love Sonnets by John Gotti. Experience a facet of the dapper Don that you don't often read about in the tabloids. This collection of ardent, elegantly crafted Petrarchan love sonnets, composed by the capo di tutti capi of the Gambino crime family between 1983 and 1992, is masterfully translated from the Italian by the esteemed Richard Howard, winner of the National Book Award for his rendering from Yiddish to English of Meyer Lansky's Talmudic commentaries. The Complete Guide to Forensic Musicology, a comprehensive sourcebook exploring this fascinating and revolutionary field in which scientists, by studying molecular changes in the ear's cochlea, can determine what music homicide or suicide victims were listening to at the time of their deaths. 300 milligrams of Dianabol. I wrote my first play quite late in life. In fact, it wasn't until I was almost 25 years old that I entered a theater for the first time. I carried a metal pail of candy corn in one hand and a pail of soda in the other. I was straight from the countryside, a strapping, libidinal bumpkin, utterly unsophisticated. I'd gone to see Ida Villanueva in Green Wind, Black Kites, a film about a man who spends 4 days at a Robert Bly Wildman workshop at which every dish is made out of garbanzo beans. For example, faux steak tartare and faux blood sausage, both meatless and consisting solely of garbanzo beans and clever seasoning. And when he returns home, he locks himself in a closed, unventilated garage and asphyxiates himself on his own intestinal gas. The movie hinges on the question of whether he should be considered a suicide, thereby making his wife ineligible to collect his death benefits, or whether he should be considered a moron who has accidentally rid future generations of his genetic toxicity in the self-cleaning oven of Darwinian evolution, in which case his wife should be rewarded under the insurance company's innovative Green Echo Bonus policy, double indemnity for the spouses of policyholders who die making a contribution to the health of the planet. Angie Dickinson plays the grieving widow. Gene Hackman plays the gutsy insurance adjuster who lobbies for her echo bonus, falls deeply in love with her, and is eventually pecked to death by a 175-pound genetically engineered gamecock while trying to disrupt a cockfight sanctioned by the Venezuelan Institute of Biotechnology in Caracas. Ida Villanueva plays a beautiful and temperamental violin prodigy, longing to be loved, but distrustful of the men she so gladly exploits, who, by film's end, has degenerated into a frumpy, vulgar, and castrating middle-aged shrew. And so you see, the theater, as a cultural institution, certainly as an expressive prerogative, did not even enter my consciousness until I was an adult. while ambitious young tyros were honing their playwright skills in MFA programs, poring over their Marlowe, their Ibsen and O'Neill, I was ensconced in my basement laboratory, manipulating the size of my scrotum with a recombinant strain of filarial elephantiasis that I'd developed. Filarial elephantiasis, in its natural form, leaves its victims with grotesquely deformed limbs and sometimes with scrota the size of basketballs. But precise titration of my altered strain allowed me to capriciously enlarge or shrink my scrotum with impunity. At that stage of my life, walking through a shopping mall with a pair of gigantic testicles ballooning the crotch of my jeans was an infinitely more compelling pastime than sitting in a library carrel scribbling marginalia in a copy of Morning Becomes Electra. And in all candor, it still is. Varicose Moon, a play in one act. Characters: the host, the contestant, the audience. Setting: a television studio in Pyongyang, North Korea. The host: it says here that you have trouble trusting other people. The contestant: that's right, Bob. It's probably related to something that happened to me when I was a kid. My grandmother, who'd always seemed like a sweet, kind, indulgent old lady, went out for a pack of cigarettes one day. I happened to be at the newspaper stand that afternoon, leafing through the latest muscle magazines. Grandma didn't see me right away. I had my back to the register. She asked for a pack of Lucky Strikes, and I recognized her voice, and I turned around and said, "Nana, hello." She looked insane. She grabbed me and dragged me outside. "I'm not the Nana I appear to be, kid," she said. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to squirm out of her grasp. I'd never realized how physically strong she was, or how masculine her body odor was when she exerted herself. "I've got a grandma facade, but inside I'm the most un-grandma-like creature on earth." "Un-grandma-like how?" I asked, not ready to accept this challenge to my idealized version of the doting, potato pancake-making, warm-hearted geriatric. "What if I told you that I'm a total slut, that I have a female lover, an ex-Marine who's a bouncer at a bar in Key West, that I attacked a mailman with a baseball bat when I lived in Spain, and he's been a brain-damaged vegetable ever since, although he can still get erections? And that's how I conceived your father." "You mean you attacked Grandpa with a baseball bat and then sat on his poor, insensate erection to get your own sick jollies, and that's how my dad was conceived?" "That's right. That's your grandfather. You always thought he had a stroke, right?" I was getting pissed at her now. "You're a liar." She spit on the street. "You're just too much of a naive baby to accept the truth." Just then, these guys jumped out of a van parked across the street. "Surprise!" they yelled. "What's going on?" I asked. "Tell him, Grandma," one of them said. And she said, "Mark, you're on America's favorite secret videos." Or America's funniest covert surveillance videos or something. I don't remember the exact name of the show. Some rewarmed version of Candid Camera. I was deeply hurt by the whole episode. I felt that my grandma had betrayed me. But no one in my family understood how I felt. My parents and my sister were all excited about Grandma and me being on TV, and they couldn't understand what my problem was. They had no idea how embarrassed I felt about the video and how mortified I'd be when all my friends saw it. And they had no inkling of how painful and profoundly disillusioning it was to have my own grandmother behave in such a dishonest and treacherous way to me. The host: Okay, let's get started. The contestant. Team Leyner for 100, Bob. The host. When he was in the 3rd grade, he had stationery printed up that said, "From the word processor of Mario Puzo." And he'd write these unbelievably prolix, baroque, hallucinatory, torridly erotic mash notes to the female teachers in his elementary school. Today, farmers let their land lay fallow after having visions of his semen raining down from the sky and fecundating their fields. Wives refuse to get out of bed, remaining supine, their legs spread in the air, after dreaming that he's floated into their bedrooms like a muscle-bound incubus and made love to them. The contestant. Who is Mark Leyner? The host. Who is Mark Leyner is correct for $100. Where the bee sucks, there suck I. In your culture, it's not considered appropriate for a heterosexual man to be in the presence of his heterosexual sister if she is naked, correct? Asked the anthropologist. The tribal headman nodded. Yes. The anthropologist, who was tape recording the conversation and taking written notes, made a quick notation and then looked up, smiling at the headman. It's also not considered appropriate for a heterosexual woman to be in the presence of her heterosexual brother if he is naked, correct? Correct. Why is this? The modesty of a man or a woman in the presence of his or her opposite-sex sibling is a built-in preventative mechanism that has the effect of precluding sexual arousal. Sexual arousal between siblings is incestuous, and incest is an absolute taboo in our culture. What about a homosexual man and his heterosexual sister? The heterosexual sister will feel ashamed to be naked in front of her homosexual brother. But the homosexual brother will not be aroused by the nakedness of his sister. Presumably not. So what's the problem? The heterosexual sister may herself become aroused by exhibiting her naked body to a man, whether or not he is aroused. And since in this case the man is her brother, the arousal is incestuous and taboo. That makes sense. The anthropologist bowed and grunted, a sign of respect. End of side 3.